When it comes to your work as a change agent, how much does money actually matter? Whether you're a philanthropist giving money away or a social entrepreneur who's raising money, how important is money to making the change that you want to make out in the world? Chances are you think it's pretty important, and it probably is. But it's also true that there are other forms of capital that are critical to making change. And what we're going to talk about today is really taking stock of those other forms of capital and seeing if there may be any that you have overlooked or that you could draw on to be even more effective in your work as a change agent. So what forms of capital really matter to you? A lot of us are thinking that money is kind of a universal seedbed for the change that we want to make in the world. We may recognize that there are other things that go into making change, but we actually, when we're raising money or giving it away, we get so focused on how much money we need or how much money we have to give away to make change in the world that we don't think about other forms of capital. And so, it's really worth doing that. And Gandhi was one who said capital in some form or other will always be needed. He was someone who criticized capitalism in some respects, but he also respected not just the power of financial capital, but also the power of other forms of capital. And there's actually a very helpful framework that was developed by folks connected with the Aspen Institute at wealthworks.org. And this framework has 8 forms of capital. This was built out to help people who are doing regional economic development. But we're going to actually adapt this in the lens of a broader change-making effort. Whatever the change is you want to make in the world, what are the 8 forms of capital that you can draw on? So first, individual capital. That's you, your time, your physical, your mental energy, your autonomy to act. And, most of us have some degree of agency, and the world of self-development often ignores the larger systems around us and focuses just on, you have to take action, you have to bootstrap your way. But the reality is that whatever system we're in, the agency that we have is our thoughts, our feelings, our actions, and this moment. That's what we have to work with. And that's why we start with individual capital, because it is so important to making change for you as a change agent. And then intellectual capital. This is another really important one. Ideas, can be incredibly powerful as a source of change. And knowledge, even your theory of how the world works is really important. We talk about getting real a lot in the work that you do as a change agent. Social capital, hugely important. And also something we have to pay attention to, because as much as we may draw on it without thinking, that can also be a way in which systems replicate themselves. Unequal access to social capital is one of the most insidious ways in which inequality persists over time, despite sometimes our best intentions. Cultural capital. This is incredibly powerful as an asset for making change, but it's also something that we can overlook too easily. And we talked in previous conversations about worldview and shared beliefs and how powerful they can be in framing what people think is possible. And also, when something becomes viral in a culture, change can occur rapidly because culture is such a powerful lens for us for interpreting reality and then therefore taking action. Natural capital. This can be really important, particularly if what we're doing relates to the environment, but natural capital can be a factor in all kinds of change-making work. Built capital, physical infrastructure, often comes up a lot in economic development, but sometimes if you need a place for people to convene to make change, you want to be thinking about built capital as an asset to draw on. And if you're a funder, you may have access to built capital. Many funders actually use their office spaces in creative ways, or actually go out and build space in communities that can be used in creative ways. Political capital. Anyone who's ever worked as an advocate knows how important this is. And this is also, like social capital, can be less visible, and therefore differential access to political capital can be one reason that systems of inequality persist over time. So we really want to pay attention to stocks of political capital. And then lastly, of course, financial capital, where many people start when they think about capital in general and don't go beyond that. But of course, money matters, and money in many forms, not just cash, but money that's sitting in donor advised funds not being used is still financial capital, even if it's not being harnessed. So let's take stock. What matters most to you when it comes to capitalizing the change that you want to make in the world. And how important is individual capital for you? When I think about the change that I'm trying to make in the world, what I'm passionate about is getting tens of billions of dollars off the sidelines and into the hands of forward-thinking social entrepreneurs. And so that work that I'm doing, really, I want to show up with my greatest energy, my best self to do that work. And that's why we talk so much in this journey of joyful impact about developing yourself, because changing the world for real starts with you. Intellectual capital. Again, ideas can be incredibly powerful. How important are they in your work? And do you have access to the ideas that you need? Do you need to go engage other people to generate the ideas? We talk a lot about design thinking, going to the people who are closest to the problem to generate the ideas about resolving it. Social capital. This is incredibly important in making change. And as we talked about, you want to understand, if you don't have access to all the social capital that you need or want to make change, how can you get access? How can you build partnerships? How can you create more social capital? Cultural capital, one of the most powerful drivers of change. And again, in the work that I'm doing in philanthropy and philanthropic advising, the culture of philanthropy is one of the most important things that we need to work together to change. And, doing that can be, you can draw on individual, intellectual, and social capital as part of a culture change effort. And then when you actually change a culture, you can see that change move through a society rapidly, and sometimes without even using any financial capital directly. Natural capital, for some people who are working on climate change or other issues that relate directly to the environment, this is going to be hugely important. And likewise, we talked earlier about build capital. Is this something that really matters? If you're working on homelessness or supportive housing, this can be a critical aspect of the solution in the arena in which you're working. And, when we think about the effects of the pandemic and the fact that it's possible we're going to have a lot of office space that isn't going to be used the way that it was previously, that is a tremendous asset in our society, that it's privately controlled, a lot of it. But is there some way creatively we can harness that asset to create more affordable housing? That's the kind of thing that you want to be thinking about. Political capital. Again, how important is that in the change making that you're doing? If you're an advocate, it's probably going to be central in your thinking. But even if you are trying to solve other problems that don't seem immediately political, it's worth asking yourself, are there public resources being deployed in some way in this arena that I can influence or change in a way that's going to help me? And having political capital may be an incredible boost in that respect. And lastly, financial capital. When I think about my own mission around getting the billions of dollars into play in forward-thinking philanthropy, financial capital is hugely important. And of course, I myself don't have access to that kind of financial capital. So engaging with people who do have that resource is a big part of what I do. But I think the thing to take away from this framework, and you can, by the way, you could use this framework, you could score it out, on a scale of 1 to 10 for each of these, and sort of look for ones that are incredibly important where your access is low. And then that's where you want to think creatively about how you can build access to that resource. But let's think a little bit through another lens when we think about how we tap into these 8 different kinds of capital or assets. And we talk a lot about renewable resources. Those are great, right? Because you use it and then it can kind of get recycled, renewed, come back, someone else can use it. But there's actually something even more powerful than renewable resources. And this is where we have to geek out a little bit and get into some microeconomics. So non-rival and anti-rival goods are even better than renewable resources. What am I talking about? Well, not all resources are created equal. Some resources are finite and they are excludable, meaning that if I have it, I can prevent you from having it. And it's actually worth running through this framework for a second here to just get a sense for which of the resources you're drawing on have these properties of being non-rival or even anti-rival, because anti-rival resources are amazing. The more I have of something, the more you can have, and the better it works for you. For example, like Waze, the traffic app, the more people who get on that platform and use it, the better it works for everybody. Although if you're a really dedicated Waze user, sometimes you wish that not everyone knew about the same shortcut that it's routing you on. But in theory, and in general, the more people who use something, an anti-rival good, the better it works. Another great example is in the cultural arena. Cultural practices that encourage behaviors that make everyone safer, like wearing a face mask in a pandemic, that can be an amazing engine for change. And then on the other extreme, we have goods that are rival and finite, and that are excludable, like fossil fuels or other non-recyclable minerals. Once we use it up, I have it, you don't, and there's no more. So the more we can harness assets that are in the bottom part of this quadrant, where like a non-rival good, where my use doesn't reduce the supply for you, like Netflix subscription is an example of that, or a public art installation being a public good. I'm not going to go all the way into the details of this framework, but just when you think about this and apply this back to those 8 resources, it's worth realizing that cultural capital, in many instances, can be both an anti-rival good and a non-excludable good, meaning that the more we build cultural capital around making change, the more powerful it is for everyone, the more benefit everyone has. And a lot of us, approach money as a scarce, non-renewable resource. But it doesn't actually have to be non-renewable, especially certain kinds of philanthropy. There's creative philanthropy, like literally revolving loan funds that help nonprofits build facilities. So there are all kinds of ways where whatever the resource is that you're putting into play in your change-making work, you can think about it critically and see if you can find ways to make it more open, more accessible, and more leveraged by thinking about this little microeconomic frame. Now, why do I mention all this? Well, one piece I want to get back to here is the individual and intellectual capital. That's really the self-development piece. Cultural capital as well connects to these 4 commitments of joyful impact that we talk about in this journey of self-development as a change agent. Getting visionary, prioritizing visionary social impact above ego-driven needs. Getting real, seeking and speaking the truth to everyone, including yourself. Getting together, treating others with consideration and not contempt. And getting better, committing to continuous personal development and growth across all the areas of your life. Those are sort of foundational commitments that relate back to these quadrants of resources that are, you yourself are an incredible, renewable, and even, to use the sort of geeky term, anti-rival resource. The more you develop yourself, the more benefit it has for others when you are doing this work as a change agent. The more you focus on positive cultural practices that promote the change that you and others are trying to make in the world, the more you can actually see that change roll out without relying on money and other resources that may feel scarcer, that may prompt more of a scarcity mindset. So I hope this framework gives you some ideas for how you can harness resources, all these 8 forms of capital, more creatively and more powerfully as you pursue your work as a change agent. If you like this video and you want to access the worksheet or any other material that goes with it, just click the link below or head on over to joyfulimpact.co. That's the website where we have all the material we use for working with coaching and personal development for change agents. You can set up a free account in the members area, and you can also check out the blog where we have new content coming out all the time. Why are we putting all this out there for free? Because the world has never been more in need of a new, greatest generation of change agents. I hope this material is helpful to you, and if it is, please like the video, subscribe to the channel. That will help us spread the word.